Now it's time for The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell. Hey, Lawrence.
Hey, Jen. We have James Tallarico joining us, the Texas Democratic Senate candidate. And wow, Donald Trump is really afraid that he is going to win that Texas Senate race because Donald Trump is attacking him in a way that is strong even for Donald Trump, which is to say crazy, outright crazy. James Tallarico will be responding to Donald Trump in this hour here on this program.
I can't wait. Well, when you have a candidate who just raised a whopping $27 million in the first quarter, the most of anyone ever running for the Senate this early in the Senate cycle, who also can speak authentically about their faith and how it guides why they want to run for office, that is scary for the Republicans. They should be scared, probably.
Donald Trump has taken notice. We're gonna hear from James Tallarico on it tonight.
Looking forward to it.
Jen. Thanks, Jen. I think I have failed. I am not feeling good about this tonight because I think I have failed at properly distributing my attention and your attention across the madness and the poison that emerges every day, day after day, week after week, month after month, from Donald Trump's freaks and goons working for him. Because today, I learned something about Robert Kennedy that's worse than anything I'd already known about Robert Kennedy Jr. And I could have known this 2 years ago if I had been paying enough attention and distributing my attention adequately across this range of madness, but we learned it today in a congressional hearing. And so we will be covering that here tonight, and it leaves me feeling that if I spend every minute on this program for the rest of the years that I am doing this program, attacking Robert Kennedy, it will be less than what he deserves. A new book about the most perverse cabinet secretary in history tells us that Robert Kennedy Jr. wrote in his own diary about stopping his car with his kid in the car so that he could pick up a roadkill raccoon and cut off the penis of that raccoon, according to his own diary, as he said in the diary, so that he could study it later. That's not the worst thing we know about him. I thought that was the sickest thing that I was going to learn about Robert Kennedy Jr. this week, but Democratic Congresswoman Terry Sewell confronted Robert Kennedy Jr. today in a House hearing with a statement he made 2 years ago when he was a presidential candidate, who I was ignoring, as most other people were. And so it was news to me. It was news to so many of us. Deeply sickening news today that Robert Kennedy Jr. said 2 years ago that if he were elected president, he would rip every black child. He used the phrase, every black kid. He would rip every black child out of the arms of that child's mother or father and take that child away to a federal government facility that he would create so that every black child would then, quote, get reparented. That was his Nazi name for his idea about black children in America, that every one of them needed to be reparented by someone other than their parents, who Robert Kennedy Jr. would choose and would be a federal government employee, presumably. He was going to do that. He wanted to do that to every black kid. Those were his words, every black kid. Robert Kennedy Jr. lied to Congress today, saying that he didn't say that. We have the tape tonight. You will hear him say that. Lying to Congress is a crime. Robert Kennedy did that today. And so it's Robert Kennedy Jr.'s second crime that we know about, the first being his felony conviction for possession of heroin when he was working in the Manhattan District Attorney's Office in a job he got exclusively because his father had been a friend of the Manhattan District Attorney. Every black kid convicted of felony possession of heroin, like Robert Kennedy Jr., got prison time. Many of them very, very long sentences that ruined their lives. But Robert Kennedy Jr. got the rich, famous, white kid sentence, the Kennedy sentence of nothing, not 1 day of incarceration. He is so much worse than you thought, and very much to my surprise, because I thought I knew pretty much every bad thing about him. He's worse than I thought. He is a walking, vile, racist poison, along with being a danger to public health here and around the world. I never talked to him when we were in the same small college classroom of about a dozen students for one semester, partially because he didn't seem to be awake most of the time. Years later, he confessed to being a heroin addict every day of college and every day of high school, which I guess explained what I was seeing in that college classroom when he showed up. I felt sorry for him then. I really did. I felt sorry for all those Kennedy kids. I thought about his burden. I thought his burden was unimaginable. His father assassinated when he was 14 years old, after his uncle, the president, had been assassinated when he was 9 years old. But Robert Kennedy Jr. lost any sympathy from me decades ago and has lost the sympathy of most of his family members who urged Republican senators not to confirm this madman as Secretary of Health and Human Services. And tonight, under one of the most racist cabinet, as one of the most racist cabinet members in history, including in our government during slavery, measles infections have skyrocketed because of the demented, screaming ignorance of Robert Kennedy Jr. Michael Steele, a black parent, wants a word with Robert Kennedy Jr. tonight. And Michael has agreed to come back to work tonight to join our discussion, when I will simply hand the microphone to Michael and get out of the way. 4 hours after his Health and Human Services Secretary was exposed in a House hearing this morning as having said that every black kid in America needs to be taken away from their terrible parents and reparented by the government, the President of the United States was not asked a single question about that when speaking to reporters, because that madman has decided to become the first American politician in history to fight with the Pope. In his continuing tour of African countries today, Pope Leo said this in Cameroon.
Jesus told us, "Blessed are the peacemakers, but woe to those who manipulate religion in the very name of God for their own military, economic, or political gain, dragging that which is sacred into darkness and filth."
The darkness and filth of Donald Trump's mind did the only thing it could do when responding to the Pope today, when any sane president would have not taken the Pope's words personally, and certainly not amplified them by responding. Donald Trump simply lied about the Pope, the standard Trump play, lie, while of course lying about himself, when Donald Trump actually said twice, "I'm all about the gospel. I'm all about the gospel." When asked why he is fighting with the Pope, Donald Trump told the despicable and instantly provable lie that the Pope thinks Iran can have a nuclear weapon.
Lewis, I'm not fighting with him. The Pope made a statement. He says Iran can have a nuclear weapon. I say Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon.
Fighting with the Pope is stupid enough as a simple political matter. Fighting with the Pope when you are demonstrably wrong is something beyond stupid. And then lying about what the Pope said in a world where everyone knows what the Pope said and didn't say is another Trumpian act of pure public insanity.
I disagree with the Pope. If the Pope would allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon, you can't do that.
No Pope has ever wanted any country to have a nuclear weapon. No Pope has ever wanted nuclear weapons to spread as they have in the second half of the 20th century. And so Donald Trump doesn't even know what he's disagreeing with the Pope about. Catholic bishops have pointed out that the Pope has simply been preaching the gospel. That's their phrase, preaching the gospel, to which the man who doesn't know what the word gospel means actually said, I'm all about the gospel.
There was a group of bishops that did put out a statement saying the Pope isn't merely exercising his opinion, he's preaching the gospel. I mean, what do you say to people that view this?
Well, I want him to
the
preach the gospel. I'm all about the gospel. I'm all about the gospel. I'm about it as much as anybody can be.
Once again, we are facing a demented Trumpian burst of language and thought. I'm all about the gospel. I'm about it as much as anybody can be. I'm about it as much as anybody can be. You've never heard anyone tell you they are all about something in that particular weird language formulation, as much as anybody can be. But that is the Donald Trump psychosis that demands that he be the absolute best, the superlative at everything. He is, in his description of himself, the best at hiring people, which somehow includes all of the people he fired the first time he was president because they were all so terrible as of the moment he fired them, and the 2 cabinet secretaries that he's fired so far this time around. And he's the only person in America of any race who has ever said, I'm the least racist person in the world. Those are his exact words. The psychotic, insecure competitiveness of Donald Trump isn't satisfied with simply declaring himself not racist. He has to be less racist than Joe Biden, less racist than Barack Obama, less racist than Martin Luther King Jr. and Nelson Mandela. And so the jumbled, dysfunctional mind of Donald Trump that started a war with Iran was capable of delivering this assessment of his war today.
We have a very good relationship with Iran right now, as hard as it is to believe.
Hard to believe? What's hard to believe about that? Donald Trump launched a war with Iran for no reason, bombed every military target they could find, along with a university and at least one girls' school, killing hundreds of innocent children. Why wouldn't we have a very good relationship with Iran right now? We've never had a good relationship with Iran, but Donald Trump says that after all of the destruction that he has visited upon Iran, we have a very good relationship with Iran right now. Those are his exact words. Now, think of how deeply sick your brain has to be to think you can say that sentence out loud in America today. That's not a matter of underestimating the intelligence of your audience. That is a matter of having zero functional intelligence of your own, zero ability to even hear what you are saying. Donald Trump has said Iranians have agreed to almost everything he wants.
We had to make sure that Iran never gets a nuclear weapon. And we're at that. They've agreed to that. They've totally agreed to that. They've agreed to almost everything.
Well, I don't know about almost everything, but he is absolutely right that Iran has agreed to never acquire a nuclear weapon. When he's right, he's right. In fact, I have their agreement right here in writing. There it is right there. That highlighted spot you see right there says Iran reaffirms that under no circumstances will Iran ever seek, develop, or acquire any nuclear weapons. 11 years ago. This is the agreement that President Obama's Secretary of State John Kerry got Iran to sign, a promise to under no circumstances ever seek, acquire, or develop any nuclear weapons. 5 other countries, China, France, Germany, Russia, the United Kingdom, joined that negotiation to convince Iran to sign this deal. Iran agreed to allow hundreds of inspectors into the country to constantly monitor their activity to be sure that Iran was never developing a nuclear weapon. And the agreement was working. There was not a shred of evidence to be found anywhere by anyone, including Israeli intelligence, that Iran in any way violated their agreement with President Obama and 5 other countries involved. And so Donald Trump should be able to get the Iranians to put in writing the same thing they put in writing 11 years ago. But no one in the news media should treat that as some kind of breakthrough, because Donald Trump, in the single stupidest diplomatic action in American history, just ripped up that towering diplomatic achievement by Secretary of State John Kerry and President Obama and the other participating countries in that negotiation, all of whom worked very hard for years to convince Iran to never develop nuclear weapons and put that promise in writing. Donald Trump just ripped it up. That agreement, that successful agreement, allowed monitors from all of those countries into Iran to study everything that Iran was doing every day and make sure Iran was not developing nuclear weapons. When Donald Trump ripped up that agreement, all of those inspectors were immediately thrown out of Iran, thrown out of the country. Now, let's see how many inspectors Donald Trump gets back into Iran, and don't be surprised if it is 0. Donald Trump, who could not successfully negotiate an agreement to buy the silence of porn star Stormy Daniels, is now trying to get Iran to agree to what it agreed to 11 years ago. And while they're at it, please reopen the Strait of Hormuz, which Iran had never closed before during any other presidency and any other conflict. It took Donald Trump to achieve the closure of the Strait of Hormuz in Iran, and now Donald Trump will consider it a negotiating triumph if Iran simply reopens it. So Donald Trump's incompetent negotiators are negotiating tonight for the world as it existed before Donald Trump became president the first time. And that buffoon tore up that agreement in his first term and is now begging Iran to give him the deal that John Kerry so carefully negotiated on behalf of President Obama. When the Pope quoted Jesus Christ today, saying, "Blessed are the peacemakers," he was quoting the principle that guided Barack Obama and John Kerry: peacemaking. Blessed are the peacemakers. You don't have to be religious in any way to know that peacemaking is the ultimate achievement in foreign policy and governing, and that war making is the ultimate failure. And when the Pope warned today against, quote, those who manipulate religion and the very name of God for their own military, economic, or political gain, dragging that which is sacred into darkness and filth, most of the world interpreted that as a description of the irreligious man in the White House who now says, I'm all about the gospel. I'm about it as much as anybody can be. My friend Michael Steele will join us after this break. Donald Trump's Health and Human Services Secretary, who was convicted of the felony of heroin possession during the 14 years that he admits to having been a heroin addict, is the first cabinet secretary in history, indeed the only administration official in the administration of any president in history who wants to rip every black child in America out of the arms of that child's mother and that child's father. Every single black child. Robert Kennedy Jr. believes that every black child in America has bad parents and that every black child in America needs to be reparented. That is his personal Nazi word for it, reparented. He did not say that some black children need to be reparented by him. He did not say that thousands of black children need to be reparented. He said, quote, every black kid needs to be reparented by the federal government in institutions run by him. Yes, it's insane. Yes, he is obviously insane. Yes, it's the single most racist thing said in the 21st century in America and possibly ever in America. And I, for one, along with most people, did not know that he said that 2 years ago when he was a presidential candidate until Congresswoman Terry Sewell confronted him today in a House Ways and Means Committee hearing.
In a 2024 podcast interview, you suggested that black children on ADHD medication should be reparented. You said every black kid is now just standardly put on Adderall, SSRI, benzos, which are known to induce violence, and that those children are going to have to go somewhere to get reparented. There is a lot to unpack in that comment. I know that you've already answered several of the questions I was going to ask, and so I'm just going to rephrase them. Mr. Secretary, you've already admitted that you are not board-certified physician, and you've already admitted that you did not go to medical school. Have you ever reparented, or parented, I should say, a black child?
I don't even know what that phrase means, and I doubt that I said it.
A yes or no answer.
I doubt that I said that phrase. No,
absolutely
I'm not going to answer something that I didn't say.
You absolutely said it.
And here is that deeply perverted, racist madman absolutely saying it.
Every black kid is now just standard put on Adderall, SSRIs, benzos, which are known to induce violence. And those kids are going to have a chance to go somewhere and get reparented.
Donald Trump gave that sick racist a job after he said that, and every Republican senator voted for the confirmation of that poisonous racist. Joining us now is Michael Steele, co-host of The Weeknight here on MS Now. Michael, when I came across this today, I immediately hoped you could join us tonight, and I just want to hand the microphone to you.
Well, Lawrence, thank you. You know, man, just when you think you've kind of rounded all the bases, and okay, we're clear. There can't be anything more stupid or more racist or more insane. Enter RFK Jr. Thank you, first off, for setting this conversation up the way you did, because you systematically went through the facts. You systematically laid out what the man said in his own words. Couple of things. First off, there is no evidence that Black children are universally or even disproportionately medicated the way he just described. Quite the opposite, Lawrence. What the problem is in the Black community for a lot of parents who are dealing with children who have mental health issues, is actually getting the medication that they need, actually having access to the healthcare system that this fool now runs. And so the reality of coming on and saying this, whether as a presidential candidate or sitting there and not even realizing 2 years later that not only did you say it, but this is an attitude that you openly expressed, speaks again to just how unfit you are for the job. The second thing that I think to keep in mind is the type of medication he's talking about. Again, it's not used for the kind of thing that behavior he described. In fact, Adderall is something that reduces impulsivity. It's something that is put in place to help lower the rates of risky or aggressive behavior, right? So where did that come from? Oh, maybe the stereotyping of young black kids as being overly aggressive. I have two Black children, sons especially. I can't tell you the number of times we had to deal with issues around their behavior if they got too aggressive, particularly when they were younger. You know, and so the reality of it is, if that's the go-to, Lawrence, that when a child acts out as a lot of children do, and you know, sometimes gets a little bit rough and tough in the tumble of the playground, you're going to then go, oh, well, that, you know, they're aggressive, they're behaving a certain way. That again feeds the stereotype that goes back so many generations in Black communities. And I think the last one of the last points is, you know, the adultification of kids, of young Black boys especially, ties into this or reparenting BS. Who gonna raise my child? That fool? I thought the congressman asked the right question. Have you ever parented, let alone reparented, a Black kid? Have you ever had to deal with not just the economic, the political, the education, but the social stigmas that child has to grow up with just by being Black? Look, I'm not on your show tonight making excuses for crap. I'm not out here trying to explain away everything. But this is a man who's in a position of responsibility in our government and who's expressed a view about Black kids, not just some, as you noted, but all of them. And so what are Black parents to expect when they have to access this system with this numbnut sitting at the top of it, dictating the terms of how we're going to receive health care, who gets health care, what kind of health care they're going to get, what type of mental health needs they need to be addressed, and how do we deal with broader societal issues along race and economics that feed the current system to push out the kind of nonsense he's talking about.
Michael, I saw it as an attack on Black children and Black parents, all of them, which is why it was so important for us to be able to hear from you tonight. Michael Steele, thank you very, very much for joining us.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Coming up, Donald Trump is afraid of losing the Senate election in Texas, and I mean afraid. In fact, he sounds panicked about it when he reached into his deep well of theological wisdom to say that James Tallarico insulted Jesus. That's right. That's what Reverend Trump said. James Tallarico responded from a church pulpit in Texas. You'll see that video in a moment when James Tallarico joins us next. Here's a tax day message this week from Democratic nominee for Senate in Texas, who has now raised more money for his Senate campaign than any other candidate in the country.
Every tax dollar a billionaire writes off on their yacht is a tax dollar that has to come from you. It doesn't have to be this way. We can limit the influence of billionaires in our politics and make them pay their fair share, so we can start cutting our taxes. If we get money out of our politics, we can put money in our pockets. So next year on tax day, you can pay less than a billionaire.
On March 4th, Donald Trump said he was going to decide which Republican candidate to endorse in the Texas Senate campaign very soon. And here we are more than a month later, and Donald Trump has not picked a candidate to support, but he knows that he wants to attack James Tallarico.
And lastly, the Texas election, you said you got to make a choice on what Republican should really get the nomination.
Right.
Is it going to be Cornyn or is it going to be Paxton? What do you think?
Well, let me tell you the good news. The good news is their candidate is whacked out with his 6 different forms of gender and all the things that I saw. The insult to Jesus. I mean, such an insult.
James Tallarico responded to Donald Trump from the pulpit of a Texas church.
The President of the United States just said that I insulted Jesus. You want to know what insults Jesus? Kicking the sick off their health care while cutting taxes for billionaires. You know what insults Jesus? Deporting the stranger and separating babies from their mothers. You know what insults Jesus? Bombing innocent school children in Iran and sending our brave men and women off to die in another forever war. You know what insults Jesus? Covering up the Epstein files and then refusing to prosecute a single person in them. I am not a perfect Christian. I don't claim to be. There's only been one perfect Christian, and he was crucified on a cross 2,000 years ago. Jesus told us, he told us to love our neighbors as ourselves. He told us on earth as it is in heaven. Can we imagine war in heaven? Can we imagine bigotry in heaven? Can we imagine poverty in heaven? Then why do we tolerate these things on earth?
And joining us now is Texas State Representative James Talarico. He's the Democratic nominee for Senate in Texas. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Did you ever expect that your campaign was going to become a theological debate with Donald Trump?
No, that wasn't on my bingo card. My granddad was a Baptist preacher in South Texas, and when I was real little, he told me that Christianity is a simple religion. Not an easy religion, he would always clarify, but a simple religion, because Jesus gave us 2 commandments to follow: love God and love neighbor. And that second commandment is what motivated me to go into public service, first as a public school teacher on the west side of San Antonio, and now as a public official in the Texas House of Representatives. I am trying as a lawmaker to love my neighbor through public policy. I'm trying to lower the cost of their housing, the cost of their child care, the cost of their prescription drugs. I'm trying to make their life a little easier, a little better, a little less stressful. And I would recommend that the president focuses more of his energy on doing the same rather than attacking me.
Having been a seminary student yourself, you've done more religious study than most people, more theological study and contemplation. What would you suggest to voters as they're watching a president trying to pick fights with a pope and a secretary of defense trying to cite the Bible as his guide in making war? How would you suggest voters sort out what they're seeing here?
Well, I always say, don't tell me what you believe. Show me how you treat other people, and I'll tell you what you believe. I think we should judge a fruit by the, or judge a tree by the fruit that it bears. And the fruit that this administration is bearing, I think, is pretty clear to all of us. It's corruption, it's cruelty, it's chaos, and there is a bipartisan backlash to that corruption, that cruelty, that chaos all over the state of Texas, all over the country. And so I'm going to keep focusing on the issues that matter to Texans, whether they're Democrats, independents, or Republicans, lowering costs, tackling corruption, trying to make government work for all of us. And I think all elected officials, from the president all the way down to dog catchers, should be doing that.
You've identified an issue here on billionaires' taxation. The favoritism for billionaires in our tax code. It's just astonishing that the top tax bracket tops out around $670,000. And so if you make let's round it off to, you make $1 million a year, you're paying exactly the same tax rate as someone who makes $100 million a year, or someone who makes several billion dollars a year. It seems like there's room for some more tax brackets there going up into those higher thresholds. But when you get on the Senate Finance Committee, as I hope you do, with this intent to go after the billionaires' favoritism in the tax code, what would you be looking for?
Well, this year, working Texans, working Americans are paying more in taxes than they did last year. And they are paying about twice what billionaires are paying. The average American pays about 14.5% in federal income taxes, and the richest 400 billionaires are paying half that. And to me, I think that's fundamentally unfair. And billionaires do this partly by using some of these exemptions, some of these loopholes in order to lower their taxable income. One of them is these business write-offs, where billionaires like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos can buy yachts and private jets, claim that they're business expenses, and use it to lower their taxes. And so I think we should close these loopholes. We should ensure that next time tax day rolls around, the average Texan is paying less than a billionaire.
As you go forward in this campaign, you still don't know which one of these Republicans you're going to be running against. Does it matter?
It doesn't, because we already know who we're running against. We're running against the billionaire mega donors who have taken over our politics, who have taken over our state and our country, and their corrupt political system. You know, we are building a movement here in the state of Texas. We are bringing people across the political spectrum together. We're bringing people together across all these divides in our state and in our country to take power back from those at the very top who have corrupted our politics and bring that power back into our communities. And I think we're going to see the fruits of that movement in November of this year.
James Tallarico, Texas Democratic Senate nominee, thank you very much for joining us again tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And coming up, we have new reporting from MS Now Justice reporter Ken Delaney about Donald Trump's pardon of the former president of Honduras who was convicted of drug trafficking after he, as the New York Times put it, flooded America with cocaine. That's next. This week, the Wall Street Journal reported that Donald Trump is promising to pardon everyone working for him in the White House and his administration. Everyone. MS Now Justice correspondent Ken Delaney has been studying some of the most outrageous pardons Donald Trump has already granted, including to the former president of Honduras, who was convicted by prosecutors in the United States of drug trafficking more than 500 tons of cocaine into this country.
It was a bold and risky military operation to snatch a Latin American leader accused of drug trafficking.
The illegitimate dictator Maduro was the kingpin of a vast criminal network responsible for trafficking colossal amounts of deadly and illicit drugs into the United States.
The irony, Justice Department officials used very similar language to describe another Latin American leader, Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernandez, when they had him arrested in 2022 and extradited to the U.S., charged with drug trafficking.
Hernandez is charged with participating in a corrupt and violent drug trafficking conspiracy to facilitate the importation of tons of cocaine into the United States from 2004 to 2022.
He was protecting and enabling drug trafficking to take place.
And enriching himself in the process.
Of course, if you contribute to the business, you get a cut in the business.
Human rights activist Helena Olea says the Hernandez presidency in Honduras was marred by corruption and misrule, violent crime, and fear. Prosecutors presented evidence at trial that Hernandez took millions in bribes from drug organizations, including the vicious Sinaloa cartel, to use the Honduran police and military to protect drug shipments. Prosecutors say a man was brutally murdered in a Honduran prison because he was set to testify against Hernandez. It was a strong case, and an American jury agreed.
He received a 45-year sentence from that case. I think it was a righteous investigation with righteous charges.
I feel 45 years wasn't enough for this president who has ruined the lives of many Hondurans and has affected many families.
But in December, Donald Trump pardoned Hernandez and set him free.
I was told, I was asked by Honduras, many of the people of Honduras, they said it was a Biden setup.
President Trump said that he had been told that JOH was treated unfairly. Is there any evidence of that?
None that I've seen.
Thomas Padden ran the Justice Department's now defunct Organized Crime Drug Task Force, which helped investigate both Hernandez and Maduro.
I've been over 30 years as a federal prosecutor, 47 years total of military and civilian service. I haven't seen anything like this.
Seeing Hernandez walk free shocked not only career prosecutors in the U.S., but Hondurans, who wondered how this could happen. History will judge him, this woman says. It's surprising for all the things that were done at the beginning when they took him away.
That is absolutely shocking. This pardon of Juan Orlando Hernandez upends the justice system and appears to be completely contrary to the public interest.
Liz Oyer is a former DOJ pardon attorney. She says Trump has wielded his clemency powers recklessly, freeing convicted fraudsters, corrupt politicians, and violent offenders who assaulted police officers on January 6th, very few of whom have expressed remorse for their crimes.
The constitutional clemency power was put there by the framers of the Constitution to allow the president the ability to do mercy when mercy is warranted and deserved. And Donald Trump is not using it in that way.
My profound gratitude to President Donald J. Trump.
That's Hernandez using social media to thank President Trump after his pardon. So how did this happen? Longtime Trump ally Roger Stone has acknowledged delivering the pardon request to the White House. And in December, Hernandez thanked Stone while appearing as a guest on Stone's radio show.
I really appreciate the way you handle this. Whoever knows my case in detail, they really know that I was wrongfully convicted.
You, sir, were absolutely framed. The hard left, the narrative is driving them crazy. Trump pardons a drug trafficker. None of these people have examined the case against you.
In a text message to MS Now, Stone acknowledged passing on a letter from Hernandez to President Trump requesting a pardon, but he said he wasn't paid for his advocacy. Does this pardon undermine confidence in the U.S. justice system?
Yes, it does. When you just let go the convicted trafficker, you're encouraging more traffickers to take the risk, creating more motivation for other organizations to stand up and target us. Because at the end of the day, will they really be held to account?
MS Now Justice and Intelligence reporter Ken Dilanian joins us now. Ken, so I'm just wondering, Nicolas Maduro's sitting there in his jail cell awaiting trial, wondering what Roger Stone's phone number is. I mean, what is the difference between Hernandez and Maduro here?
You know, there's no difference in terms of the charges, Lawrence. They were both charged with conspiracy to import tons of cocaine into the United States. And I can tell you, the DEA agents involved in both cases saw them as very similar cases. They saw both men as deeply corrupt autocrats. And in fact, the same DEA case agent led both investigations. So the difference, obviously, is about politics. Juan Orlando Hernandez is a right-wing figure who made friends with Roger Stone, and Roger Stone took up his cause. And Maduro, of course, is a leftist. And, of course, there's also the fact that Donald Trump was pretty explicit about the fact that he wanted the United States to benefit from Venezuelan oil. And so you have two very similar cases treated entirely differently. The Trump administration has not explained to the public why this happened, perhaps because they just don't have a good explanation, Lawrence.
Ken, thank you very much for joining us tonight. You can see more of Ken's reporting on YouTube and msnow.com. Ken, really important reporting. Thanks for bringing it to us. We'll be right back. Ken Dilanian gets tonight's last word.